Let's talk about moving research into the patient's home. I'm Dr. Jeff Kingsley, and welcome to another edition of Riding in Cars with Researchers. So there's been a movement going on for literally 28 years now to move research into the patient's home, to make it easier for patients to participate in research. The hardest thing we do is find patients who can meet the stringent criteria for research and who have the time and the willingness to participate in research. So if it's the hardest thing we do, we need to remove as many barriers as possible, make it as easy as possible for patients to be able to participate. And the direct-to-patient movement is aimed at that. Now, these trials go by lots of different names. It's all the same thing. You'll hear people talk about virtual clinical trials, which used to be the preferred name. You'll hear direct-to-patient, you'll hear decentralized clinical trials, you'll hear hybrid trials. It's all really the same thing, largely the same thing. My preferred term is direct-to-patient because that's the entire point. Virtual clinical trials, not really a big fan of calling it virtual because it makes it sound like it's not a real trial. It's virtually a trial, but not quite a real trial. It's literally a real trial, so not a great name. Decentralized clinical trials, the name doesn't really tell you anything. Decentralized, all of our trials are decentralized today. We have 12 vendors per trial. They're all in different locations. Decentralized isn't the purpose. The entire purpose is to move the research to the patient rather than making the patient come to us. So direct-to-patient makes a lot of sense to me, and that's my preferred term, and that's what you'll hear me call it. Now, launching as an industry more and more direct-to-patient research has economic pitfalls. Direct-to-patient research will not likely be cheaper for the industry because there's a cost shifting. So what happens is you'll pay the principal investigator and the research site less per patient because the site's not being paid to draw blood, but the site is still being paid to interpret the labs. The site's not being paid to do an EKG, but is still being paid to interpret the EKG. So the site budget goes down, but that sponsor company is now having to pay a home health agency to pay others to drive to that patient's home and draw the blood or do the EKG, or maybe other technology vendors with Bluetooth-enabled blood pressures and vital signs and things like that. So there'll be a cost shifting that will probably be net neutral to the sponsor. But for the site, the per patient budget will go down. The only way the economic model makes sense for principal investigators to start doing direct to patient research is if they can enroll larger volumes of patients, in which case doing that work still becomes profitable work for an investigator, for a research site. If the per patient budget goes down and the investigator can still only enroll the same number of patients that she would have in a brick and mortar model, then in fact her business probably becomes unprofitable, in which case she's going to start turning down direct-to-patient trials, in which case our industry is going to have a hard time finding investigators who say yes to direct-to-patient work, and we're not going to gain the traction necessary to be able to move this initiative forward. So we have to remain cognizant of the economics of direct-to-patient work. That's why I'm not a big fan of hybrid, where some of the visits are in the patient's home, some of the visits have to be in my office, because by default I won't be enrolling an entire state or states. I'll still only be enrolling a small geography, patients who are willing to drive to my office. So there's some quick thoughts on the direct-to-patient movement. I'm going to do more on this topic because it's incredibly hot right now, and it's only going to increase. It is the direction we should be going as an industry, making trials easier on the patient is a patient-centric model, and that's the way we should be moving. So, some quick thoughts on direct-to-patient research. As always, thank you for riding along. I greatly appreciate it. Continue to reach out to me. Follow us on the various social media channels, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Continue to revolutionize research. Take care.